Is Meghan Markle really the royal in-law from hell? Hello everyone, welcome to Royal News Network. My name is Brittany and today we're talking about Robert Jobson's new book on King Charles, where he discusses some of the things that happened within the royal family regarding Harry and Meghan, and particularly thoughts that Catherine had during that walkabout with Harry and Meghan right after the Queen's death. We also have admissions that Charles and William apparently are no longer alone with Harry without a third party present, just to make sure Harry cannot go and blab to Oprah anymore about the conversations he had. And also how Harry and Meghan really have absolutely no allies left in the royal family. It's really quite revealing. And I think it goes to the point of Meghan Markle. She has been so much the key and the focus of what has happened to Harry and why his family no longer trusts him. And she really did disregard the cardinal rule of marrying into the royals, which is discretion. She doesn't have any of it. She doesn't know what that is. She's a Hollywood starlet. She wants to blab everything all over town. And unfortunately, the royals did not take very kindly to that. And I really think it goes to the point of that she really is kind of the royal in-law from hell, because she has made their lives so unnecessarily difficult. And she's really broken this cardinal trust that exists between royals, aristocrats, so that they can lead both private lives and also yet at the same time lead very public ones as well. So we'll be discussing this today. But if you guys haven't been here to Royal News Network before, like I said, my name is Brittany. And on this channel, I provide compelling royal commentary about the latest news and sometimes a little bit of gossip too. I also have a fashion channel. And I have my fascinator on today because today is Easter, and I went to church and I wore my fascinator in the United States, and I got at least 3 people complimented me on it, and one woman just looked at me and I could just tell there was like a big smile on her face, and she's like, "Oh, that's so cool." And I also have a weekly newsletter, Royal Wire, and I also have a couple upcoming trips to Europe. So one to Scotland, another one to Germany and Austria. So I do have a sign-up link, I believe, for the Scotland one. So I'll go ahead and submit that down below for you guys as well. If you're interested in that, once it becomes live, you'll be one of the first to know. And we also have today, since today is Easter, we had Catherine and William taking their kids to Easter service in Windsor. We also had the Tyndalls, Princess Beatrice and her husband, Princess Eugenie and her husband. We also have Sarah Chateau, Princess Anne, the King and Queen, of course, themselves. And we also have Prince Edward and Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh. I almost said the Countess of Wessex. And little Louis made his first Windsor Easter debut. Yes, he is so cute. He still looks like he is full of mischief, and he is definitely the third child of the baby. So I think it was just really great to see them out and about today. And Catherine, for the first time, big news. And I noticed it in a picture, and then of course the Daily Mail did an article about it later. Catherine wore red nail polish. It looked like a bit of a darker red. And for years, Catherine never did because the Queen was not a fan. But obviously, Queen Elizabeth II has passed, and Camilla apparently has either unrestricted or said, "You know what, Catherine, you can wear whatever nail color polish you wish." And it was kind of fun to see Catherine finally be able to do something like that. Catherine has been so unbelievably careful and so respectful of the monarchy and the traditions and the Queen, Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth. And so I think it is great to see change happening, because I think change is a good thing. And so I'm really excited to see that. And I thought it was kind of a really special and important moment. But, oh, Meghan. There was an interesting article today, too. I saw this. Why has Meghan never been to Easter Sunday service with the royals? Well, the first one, she was pretty heavily pregnant. And by the second point, they had left the monarchy altogether, which I think screams so much about who Meghan Markle actually is. She's not interested in the monarchy. She's not interested in representing the culture, the traditions, and the heritage of the United Kingdom. She was always in it for herself. And I think that's become appallingly evident in recent years. And I think it's been contributing heavily to Harry and Meghan's popularity decline. And Robert Jobson really goes through and really expands, again, what we've heard so much about how difficult Meghan was to work with, how difficult the royal family found her, how much they didn't trust her. And I think there's something really key here that Meghan missed out on, and I think really damaged her relationship with the royals for the future. So let's go ahead and get into one of his first excerpts here. So this is in regards to their walkabout in Windsor right after the Queen's death. And obviously many people thought, oh, they're getting back together. I knew they weren't. I knew this was just pretty much all for show, because I mean, the royal family, they're pretty good at PR. So this was a good PR move. And there are lots of reports that Harry and Meghan were trying to set up their own thing. The royal family got wind of it and it's like, no, no, you have to do it within our sphere. You can't just go rogue. You can't go rogue. So here is what he said. But Mr. Jobson says sources close to the royal family have confirmed to him that this was an illusion. Catherine later admitted to a senior royal that such was the feeling between the two couples. The joint walkabout was one of the hardest things she'd ever had to do. He writes, the walkabout happened before the Sussex's Netflix documentary series aired, before Harry's incendiary autobiography Spare hit the bookshelves, and before he gave a string of TV interviews in which he continued his criticisms of the royal. Mr. Jobson writes, if Catherine found it almost unbearable before all of this to share a walkabout with the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, then how, one has to wonder, do she and William feel about them now? And I think that's a great question. Obviously, it was a huge sign of professionalism, of respect for Her Majesty the Queen and her legacy, to go out and do it together as couples. And we know they don't get along. They don't like each other anymore. Especially, I feel like William and Harry are probably the worst out of it. And Catherine and Meghan really had nothing in common besides being similar in ages. Meghan is shallow, vapid, vain. And Catherine is, I think, a deeper person. She enjoys family. She enjoys her role within the royal family. And she's really been somebody who's been diligent and dedicated to this for almost 2 decades. So she met and started dating William over 2 decades ago, I believe. And so they've gone really from strength to strength. And she's had to navigate this very, very complex role within the monarchy. And she's gained the utmost respect. And then she had Meghan, who barged in, wanted to change everything, and was very disrespectful to the whole family, to Catherine, what Catherine went through, because Catherine was stalked by the paparazzi. Meghan Markle was not. She had a couple of people following her. But again, Meghan is the spare's wife. She's not the heir's wife. She will just never be as important as Catherine. And that is how the royal family rolls. So I think this tension there was always completely obvious. And yet at the same time, it was also pretty dangerous as well. And I also think it was evident that they were really trying to honor the Queen's legacy and come together. William and Catherine, knowing that even if they got in the car and it was just Harry and Meghan there, I doubt they probably said a word between them, because they couldn't trust them, and we'll get more onto why. The book says that after the interview was broadcast, so this is the Oprah Winfrey interview, William and Charles agreed that from then on, they would no longer treat Harry as a trusted, if often infuriating, member of the family. Mr. Jobson writes, they would never again meet Harry alone. There would always have to be another person in the room. And I think that is huge, that lack of breach and that lack of trust that they have in Harry, that they have made the decision that for the foreseeable future, for maybe ever, they will never meet alone with Harry. They always have to have somebody else there. And I think Harry and Meghan would be attached to that as well. I'm sure William probably cannot stand to be in the same room as Meghan Markle. And there's a reason for that. They don't trust her. And that is huge. And we'll get to that at the very end. But I think that is a huge indicator of how little trust now they have in Harry. That Meghan Markle has twisted Harry so much that even his own family no longer trusts him. He no longer has their ear. He no longer has their trust. And once you lose something like that, oftentimes it's almost impossible to get it back. He goes on to say the book says that Harry's claim in the Oprah interview that his father and his brother were trapped in their royal rules and that he had a huge compassion for them left both Charles and William extremely upset by Harry's arrogance, aghast at his lack of discretion, and furious that he the audacity to speak about their supposed feelings. Again, that you are in your brother and father's confidence. And sometimes, yes, I'm sure they did complain about their roles in life, but that was not your job to share that. And so I think they felt just both deeply offended by it, that Harry would even go there and suppose that he knows their feelings on this particular topic. And I'm sure to them that was just deeply, deeply frustrating and infuriating, because they do have to show this image to the world, and they are held to a different standard than Harry will ever have. Harry never had the pressures that they had. He has no idea what they go through on a daily basis. So for him to make such a claim is ridiculous. And then we go and get to the Sandringham summit. So this is after Harry and Meghan dropped the Brexit bombshell. The monarchy's like, okay, we need to have this summit. And they had to sweep, though, Sandringham for bugs. It says, the book retells how the Queen had the library at Sandringham swept for bugs ahead of the summit attended by Charles, Harry, and William, which she called after the Sussexes released a statement announcing their intentions to step back as senior members of the royal family. The Queen ruled that Meghan's attendance in any form was not necessary because Harry was there to represent her, the book says. A suggestion that she could join via video link from Canada was vetoed amid fears that Charles and William wouldn't be able to tell if the meeting was being recorded or if Meghan had anyone else listening in as they spoke. So this, I think, is key and huge, because Meghan mentioned that she wasn't allowed at this meeting, and she twisted it as if, oh, well, I'm an independent woman, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, and they wouldn't let me in on this meeting. So go ahead and take a listen to this here.
Imagine a conversation, a roundtable discussion about the future of your life when the stakes are this high, and you as the mom and the wife and the target in many regards aren't invited to have a seat at the table.
It was clear to me that they planned it so that you weren't in the room.
Meghan could not be in the meeting. They didn't have trust in her. She had no trust. Harry had no trust. They could not trust her to call in and actually abide by their rules, which is no recording, no doing certain things, no talking to somebody else. I mean, she could have been sitting there looking like she was alone and had 30 people behind her. And they need to be able to speak freely, and they could not do that if Meghan was on the phone. If Meghan was on the phone, they had no idea what she would do, how she would use and twist the information, how she would utilize it against Harry. They had no idea what she would do, and because of that, she could not be in that meeting. And that she twisted it to go that the monarchy was somehow being rude to her as a mother is ridiculous. They were protecting themselves. They were protecting the institution. They were protecting the other royals, because Harry and Meghan had gone on national television and blabbed their secrets or made allegations against them. And obviously, once you do that, why in the world would you think, although this was before then, but again, they knew the Tom Bradby thing. They had seen a lot of things before then. Why in the world would they let you in the room or let you be able to record it remotely when they have no control over any of the situation? It just wouldn't happen. He also said there was no meaningful conversation when Harry saw William and Charles at Prince Philip's funeral in April 2021. In Spare, Harry recalled in detail how their father pleaded for peace between his warring sons, begging them not to make his final years misery. And again, I'm not surprised by that at all. This was shortly after the Oprah Winfrey interview. I'm sure they all knew and saw Prince Philip's decline after the interview aired, and they were just aware of what was going on more broadly within the family. And they're like, you know, Harry being there, they're like, well, we'll be cordial, but we're not gonna say anything to you anymore. Because again, he's lost their trust completely. In truth, by the time his grandmother died, Harry had precious few supporters left in the family. Even the Queen, who had always had great affection for him, eventually tired of his outbursts. First, she had wearied of the volatile exchanges between Harry and his brother, which sometimes took place in her presence. Then Harry and Meghan had started publicly criticizing both the monarchy and members of the royal family. At that point, the Queen was frankly mystified by the couple's behavior, describing it as quite mad. She came to believe, however, that her grandson was so consumed by his love for his wife that it was clouding his judgment. And she felt let down. Not only was Her Majesty disappointed in Harry's decision to abandon his royal duty, but she also saw the departure of the Sussexes as a missed opportunity. Despite that, the Queen sincerely hoped that her grandson would find peace and happiness living the life he had chosen. I don't think he's finding peace and happiness, though. He seems like an incredibly embittered, angry, volatile person. Still, I think it's even worse as time has gone on. So has he found this peace in California that Meghan wanted to supposedly help them find together? No, because I think everything, every tension, every complaint, every slight he had has still been ratcheted up to 11 all the time. And there's a piece in here that will get more into details of that. But the other thing here is that the Queen was totally both upset about how Harry and William would blow up in front of her, and she also recognized that Harry was so consumed with love for his wife that he was blind to any common sense, basically. And I think that's huge. He was so consumed. He was so deluded. He was so just all-encompassing, just clinging to Meghan, that he lost all sense of himself. And I think, again, the royals do see that. The royals all recognize that. Again, it's hard, I think, to determine how they go forward in the future, but he doesn't really have any allies left in the royal family, save for Eugenie, perhaps Beatrice, and he just does not have the inroads that he did. And I'm sure they're helping, maybe being okay with the Eugenie connection, just because they want to make sure that Harry still has a route back if he wants it, and he has a family member that he's speaking to. But at this point, they've really distanced themselves, because like, Harry is so obsessed with his wife, obsessed with saving her the way he couldn't save his mother, that common sense is just completely disappeared. So it goes on to say Harry, for his part, phoned her regularly from California, but it troubled the Queen when he kept trying to air his grievances. In the end, she asked him to speak directly to his father instead. A source said Her Majesty found Harry's calls quite difficult and worrisome. She didn't want to interfere in the father-son relationship and would urge him to speak to his father. That didn't work out either. Prince Charles simply stopped taking Harry's calls after his son swore at him and repeatedly asked for funds. When the Queen asked Charles why he hadn't given in, he told her that he wasn't a bank. And again, I think this sounds completely like what Harry was doing. Every time he wants to talk to his family, he wants to air his grievances. He wants to tell them everything they did wrong, how they failed him, how they failed Meghan. He wants to make them believe the lies he tells himself. So he goes on and on and on about it. We've seen this throughout the interviews. They harp on the same things constantly. It's because they can't let these things go. And it's because they're so deluded, the family cannot communicate with him anymore because he's so into these delusions that he has that they can't even function together well anymore. And what I love as well is that Charles was, at some point, Harry constantly started asking him for funds, asking him for money, and Charles is like, no, I'm not your bank. I'm not here to fix your problems for you. You have a $30 million trust fund, a wife who was supposedly worth $5 million and is a hustler, was a game player in Hollywood. You need to fix your own things. I'm not your bank. I'm not here to bail you out of your own stupid mistakes. Again, Harry and Meghan chose the exit life. Because you did that, you need to make your own decisions. You need to make your own money. That is the life you chose. It's not the royal family's job to support you with funds while you're doing this. It's your job to figure out your own stinky mess. That is your job now because you have escaped or left the umbrella of the royal family. In real life, well, you know what? Life's tough. Get a helmet. Sometimes it's harder to be on your own than it is. But they wanted, again, that cushion of the monarchy. They didn't want to do anything themselves. They wanted the monarchy to take care of the vast majority of their needs, financial and otherwise, because they didn't want to do it themselves. So when it comes to the Megxit announcement, his father was given only 20 minutes notice before it was released. On that day, Prince Charles had just arrived in Bahrain on a Foreign Office sponsored visit to the Gulf states. As any member of the royal family could have predicted, press attention immediately switched from the tour to his bespotted son and new girlfriend. Okay, I'm sorry, this was when Harry announced that he was dating Meghan. Reports at the time suggested Charles was crushed, but this was far from the truth. Instead, he was disappointed at what he regarded as his son's bad manners. He would never have done such a thing if the Queen was on tour, said one former aide. Understandably, there is a hierarchy and a grid system, but Harry seemed to think that when it came to Meghan Markle, she would always take precedence. Again, this shows the obsession with Meghan Markle, how she was able, I think, to twist and manipulate Harry into thinking that she was going to become a victim like Diana was. And their situations were not the same. Diana was married to the future king. Harry is not. Meghan is not going to be the future really anything beyond the Duchess of Sussex, and even that is tenuous at this point. And so I think this is a dangerous precedent to set in so many ways, is that Harry is so enamored and bespotted with Meghan that everything about her comes first. But there is a hierarchy. He knows his family. He knows how to live here. And yet he's dismissing all of that to placate Meghan Markle. William was also uneasy. Privately, he thought his brother had overreacted. It was all a bit dramatic, a bit over the top, one of his former aides later recalled. As for Harry, he took offense when told that the massive attention Meghan was getting was only to be expected. He was also angry at what he considered his family's lack of support. And again, Harry and Meghan talked about this, and they had that whole sequence where they were looking for a man on a scooter and there was nobody there in the car and they looked like loons looking around going, there's a man on a scooter. Did you see somebody? They're following us. I was like, yes, I mean, somewhat they'll follow you, but you also create the attention. And Meghan, again, she fed the media machine by putting a picture of spooning bananas on Instagram after the story broke. She fed the media on this. There were pictures of her where she was trying to hint that she was dating Harry for like months beforehand. And so this idea that she was, totally unexpected about the attention. No. I think she wanted the attention. She didn't want any negative attention, but she wanted the attention. And I think the monarchy was like, okay, we see all this going on, but, we have other things we got to do too. And this is all a bit over the top. And honestly, it really was. And I remember when the statement came out, I was like, what? Why are you guys going nuclear on this? Because at the end of the day, Catherine was like stalked by 30 photographers getting out of her house on her 25th birthday. What Meghan has had to deal with was really not that bad. At their first meeting, the Queen had tea with Meghan without even realizing she was mixed race. Used to being briefed in advance whenever she met someone new, the monarch explained later in conversation with a member of her close circle that she simply hadn't been told. Of course, she had known then that Meghan's mother was black. The Queen, who had counted Nelson Mandela as one of her dear friends, would not have been in the least concerned. So again, this whole racism narrative that Meghan Markle had, I just don't think holds water. I think the real issue always was that she was a Hollywood actress. She was a B-list Hollywood actress, or C-list or D-list, always desperate for fame and fortune. And I think people saw the red flags. I even saw them when I first saw her. I was like, I thought initially that she would just put her name in the hat just to get the attention from it because she was an attention-seeking narcissist. And so I just considered that what she was doing. And so that turned out to be true was a bit shocking. But I think this idea, again, that everything related to her was racism is not. I think the royal family and others were in there were genuinely concerned about Meghan's intentions and if she could handle this royal thing without trying to make it Hollywood. In fact, she was pleased that Harry had at last found love and warmly welcomed Meghan into the royal family. But when Her Majesty suggested she should turn to Sophie, the Countess of Wessex, who's now the Duchess of Edinburgh, for support and advice, and Meghan dismissed the idea, saying, "I've got Harry," which turned out to be disastrously wrong. And again, goes against the narrative that Meghan's like, well, nobody helped me. Well, they tried to help you. You just didn't want them to help you. You wanted to fail. That's always been the rumor, and I think that shows that to be true because who would I want to take advice from, especially if I was marrying the spare? Sophie, because Sophie was closest with Her Majesty the Queen. Wouldn't you want to be the favorite in-law of the Queen? Of the monarch, whoever that happened to be, the king or whatever? That's so smart. This is how you play palace games, is by getting close to the monarch. And we'll see why that backfired on Harry and Meghan later, because I thought it was rather interesting what happened when Harry and Meghan announced Megxit and their intentions and how it didn't come to pass. Her response surprised the Queen, who had doubtlessly expected her well-meant suggestion to be taken up with gratitude. Still, that hardly mattered. Meghan, she felt, had the potential to be a great asset to the monarchy. The actress's confident presentation skills, combined with her black heritage, convinced the Queen that she should be a great champion for young women as she worked alongside Harry in his role as youth ambassador with the Commonwealth Youth Program. This is, I think, is so critical. The monarchy always saw Meghan as an asset, but she saw them as a liability to her pursuit of fame and fortune. She saw them as an asset and also a liability, something to chain her down and pull her back from what she saw was her ultimate stardom. And I think really at the end of the day, and I suggested this before, Meghan wanted to be Queen of the Commonwealth. And here's what Jobson says about this. Meghan, for her part, was said to be hugely excited about this new venture. She would certainly have known that the Commonwealth was particularly close to the Queen's heart, and that her endorsement was a great honor. Sources tell me that Meghan supposedly made a diligent study of the Commonwealth and was seen poring over her notes. Within months of the Queen's death, however, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's documentary series for Netflix seems to suggest she had a radical change of heart. To the astonishment of those who remembered Meghan's enthusiasm for her role, the series dismissively branded the Commonwealth as Empire 2.0. But again, this all comes back to, I think, Meghan wanted to rule the Commonwealth with Harry. She saw this as their future, this as her role, and the monarchy said no. And because of that, now all of a sudden it's evil and it's racist. It was good when it gave her publicity and she could travel the world on the government's dime, but it was bad all of a sudden when she couldn't do that anymore. And all of a sudden she was held to a higher standard, and oopsie doopsie, that won't work. As we now know, William had urged his brother to be cautious before committing himself to a life with Meghan Markle. Even when Harry said he definitely wanted to marry her, William apparently told him, "She's an American actress after all, Harold. Anything might happen." It wasn't the most tactful comment, but he had his reasons. He knew that even before meeting Meghan, Harry had been obsessed with the idea of marrying and settling down. And again, I think this shows William was like, I see red flags here, because the two things we hear about people who meet Meghan is there are the people who think she's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and the people who meet her and going, there's something wrong here. There's a feeling I get that something's not quite right. And I think it's the fake narcissistic charm. It works on some people and it really doesn't work on others. So you get these two sides of people because you don't really get a ton of people in between. You get a lot of people who say she's great or she's awful. So I think what happens is some people just see right through the veneer immediately. And I think William did. Remember, William knew his mother a lot better than Harry did, and I think William saw all the negative things about his mother and Meghan probably almost immediately, whereas Harry couldn't see it, and he's like, Harry, you really should slow down here, because you're not seeing what I'm seeing here. You're seeing what you want to see rather than what's actually there. So I do feel sorry for William because I think he really did try to help his brother. Then Charles dropped a bombshell saying he couldn't afford to pay for Meghan in the future, as well as for Camilla and for William and Catherine and their young family. This infuriated Harry. As his wedding day approached, the slights built up in his mind. The first introduction of his bride-to-be to William and Catherine at Kensington Palace had left Meghan with the impression that Catherine was standoffish. Okay, so two key things here. Number one, I think the reaction to the money issue was Meghan's ridiculously expensive engagement dress. $75,000 for an engagement dress. And I'm sure Charles was like, we can't afford that all the time. I think Meghan wanted that, but Charles was like, no, we can't do that. And he told Harry, I'm sure not that he couldn't afford them. It's like, I can't afford for her to spend $100,000 or close to it every time she wants to wear a gala dress. We can't do that. We can't do that. We cannot spend haute couture all the time. And so I think that was what Charles' reaction was, is they recognized pretty quickly Meghan had very, 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 very expensive tastes. And they're like, so you can buy expensive things, but you have to moderate it. It's everything in moderation. You have to spend some money here, that you have to be kind of cheap here. Crown Princess Victoria, every once in a while, she'll wear a full-length H&M dress, which costs maybe $100 or something like that. And she'll also wear Ellie Saab gowns, I'm sure, worth several thousand. So you have to, as a rule, span that gap between opulence and manageability, something that most people can buy. It's a very, very careful balance and dance, but you have to do it. And I think Charles recognized Meghan couldn't do it. Also, Catherine, I'm sure, again, recognized what William did. It's like Meghan was trying to get too close. And I think, again, if you are a genuine person, and again, Catherine is always on guard. She's been on guard for 20 years because she knows what happens when you trust the wrong people. And so I'm sure she was very, very guarded about Meghan, especially again because of that actress background, that desperate need for fame and attention. I think they all knew, is like, hey, she can be problematic here. So let's not overindulge too much, because we all have some concerns genuinely about her. William and Charles noticed that Harry seemed to be permanently on edge. Members of the bride's and groom's entourage also noted that the prince had become petulant and short-tempered, raising his voice on occasion to staff and even swearing. Harry, for his part, was now convinced that William didn't approve of his choice of bride. Whether this was the case or not, the once close bond between the siblings was fraying badly. This is something we heard a lot. There was a lot of tensions leading up to the wedding, and I don't think William approved. I don't think William saw the warning signs. Everybody saw the warning signs pretty much, except for Harry. They all tried to tell him Meghan Markle was probably bad news, and he wouldn't listen to them. And so I'm sure that did cause a lot of tensions. And the women didn't get along, and do I blame them? No. As simmering resentments threatened to boil over, Prince Charles wondered what he could do. For his part, he had welcomed Meghan, pronouncing himself captivated by her intelligence and vivacious personality. Camilla, too, had played her part as a sort of super granny, dispensing humorous, down-to-earth advice to her. But the actress made it clear that she would make her own decisions. Like any loving father, Charles was distressed when his sons clashed with each other, especially when the ill feeling between them appeared to extend to both Meghan and Catherine. Aware that both Harry and William were stubborn and strong-willed, he feared the conflict between them would be very difficult to manage and might have a detrimental impact on the monarchy itself. And he's not totally wrong there. And again, Charles is seeing these tensions boil over, and it extended to the wives too, because nobody liked Meghan. I think that's so key here, is that Catherine was immediately put off by her, and Meghan, for whatever efforts she made, I think always felt slighted by Catherine. Catherine felt slighted by Meghan, so they were never going to get along. And then you had the reality, I'm sure, where Catherine was told by William, hey, I really don't trust this woman. And Catherine again puts her guard up and is like, okay, we'll just take a step back and just have a wait and see approach. Sometimes the level of belligerence between his sons, and indeed towards himself when they challenged him, shocked Charles. One particular exchange with William had become so heated that it had actually left him shaken. Although Charles himself has a short fuse, his temper is always short-lived. Adverse to confrontation, he decided not to intervene in the clash between William and Harry, trusting that in time it would blow over. And I remember reading this in the Valentine Lowe book about Prince Charles and how much of a temper he had, and it shocked me a little bit because I hadn't really heard that much about him. And I think it has been tempered somewhat with age. I think that happens with a lot of men. And so it was just interesting to see that, and obviously William struggles a bit with that as well, and we now have Harry too. But I think again, William is a bit more, again, cautious, and he's aware of the realities of being gentle and generous to staff members, rather than Harry, who began to be belligerent to them and anyone really he disagreed with. And I'm not sure what this is referring to beforehand, but it says this angered Prince William, who saw it as a betrayal. One member of his circle said he felt especially let down. He believed the trust between them was gone. William was also now concerned at reports that the Sussex household was not a happy place to work. There was an unusually high staff turnover and unsettling claims of bullying, vehemently denied by the Sussex's lawyer by Meghan. From Harry's viewpoint, this was rubbish, fertilized by planted stories, but enough was enough. The swirl of negativity around Meghan helped them to conclude it was time to forge a new life away from the palace, press, and royal family. As Christmas of 2019 approached, he told his father that he and his wife no longer wished to serve as full-time working royals, but wanted a workable plan for them to be part in and part out, splitting their time between the UK and North America. Charles, who was used to his sons letting off steam periodically, listened but eventually said that the idea was unworkable. Oblivious to his considered opinion, the Sussexes went public with their plans. When it comes to the Megxit thing, obviously the palace did consider it. They talked about that a bit in the documentary, and I think they also recognized that there was something that maybe they tried to make things work, but what Harry and Meghan wanted, I think they recognized, could be deeply problematic if the wrong things were done. As nothing had been agreed, Charles was understandably upset. The Sussexes had ignored what he said, staking everything instead on their belief that the Queen would back them. There followed this famous Sandringham summit convened by the Queen in January 2020 to work out what they would do. So concerned was the monarch about privacy on taking advice, she had the library where the meeting was to take place swept for bugs. And again, Harry and Meghan, I thought this too, Harry and Meghan were relying on the Queen to bail them out. They were relying on the Queen and trying to manipulate her as a grandson to a grandmother, because even had Harry tried to meet with the Queen one-on-one and that was interrupted. Somebody was like, no. They said initially yes, and then they were like, no, because they knew Harry would put pressure on his grandmother and try to use, oh, but Granny, and they wanted to avoid that. And so I think that has become exceedingly clear that Charles and William were like, okay, you want this, but you cannot manipulate Queen Elizabeth into giving you what you want here. We all have to agree about this because she is in her late 90s. We're going to have to live with this, and we don't want to do things your way. And so just to end, however, the Queen did meet Harry and Meghan at Windsor Castle when they made a stopover in April 2022 en route to Holland for the Invictus Games. She also agreed to see her grandson on the proviso that he met and talked with his father too. The couple were welcomed warmly by the Queen, what turned out to be the last time Harry saw his grandmother. Charles was also at the castle along with Camilla, where he was standing in for his mother at the annual Maundy Thursday service. To add insult to injury, Harry and Meghan turned up late, meaning the meeting with Prince Charles lasted less than 15 minutes. So obviously a lot of this concerned Harry as well in his actions. But here's the huge thing here. And I think the thing that is why Meghan Markle is a royal in-law from hell is that Meghan Markle wants to trade off everything. She broke the cardinal rule of trust between family members. She broke that so severely that they no longer trust her, definitely, and even no longer trust Harry either. And that is huge because when it comes to the monarchy, when it comes to living your life so publicly, what you need is people around you that you can trust so that you can live a private life and give some things to the public and yet keep a lot of things private too. And that requires all your friends, all your family, everyone to have discretion. And that's what the royals generally do. They generally keep together. They're tight-lipped. They share little bits here and there, but it's nothing too personal. It's just something, maybe a funny little anecdote. I know Mike Tyndall shared something about somehow his pants slipped and Princess Anne got a inside glimpse of his boxers, which had something funny on it. And I think she said something funny in response to him. Those type of things work. But Harry and Meghan in particular, she could have had a fantastic and wonderful role, but it required her to keep the confidence of the other royals. Because what is so devastating here is that Catherine and William try to live a private life. They try to give their children privacy. And Harry and Meghan trample all over that. They trample all over their efforts. They make the whole family vulnerable to suit their own need, their own narrative. They took pictures on palace grounds that they weren't authorized to. They put it on Netflix for the whole world to see. That is just such a breach of trust that is huge. And when it comes to royals, trust is everything. Because at the end of the day, all you have between your family members, yes, you have jewelry and tiaras and gowns and galas and just so many different things, and standing on a balcony and waving and having people address you and curtsy to you as His or Her Royal Highness. But I think the thing they value more than anything else is trust. Because at the end of the day, if you don't trust the people you're around, what kind of life can you lead? Otherwise, you have to worry every time that you say something. You have to be looking over your shoulder. Everything you say, you have to double check to make sure you didn't tell them the wrong thing that they could use against you in public, or say against you in public that you didn't really want to share. And I think that is something that Meghan is just why she is the worst royal in-law ever, because all of them throughout Europe, if you look at all of them, the vast majority, they don't share much about their family. And the reason they do that is because they want their privacy. And Meghan and Harry don't value that, regardless of what they say. And they're more than willing to throw anybody under the bus, share any negative story about anyone else, as long as it suits them and their agenda. So guys, let me know what you think of this latest book. And I'm going to try to get an interview with Robert Jobson when I can. So guys, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye.